Some people never change, still a loser. Brad's voice boomed across the decorated gymnasium. Everyone laughed, their heads turning toward me like I was the punchline to a 30-year-old joke. I smiled and said, "Guilty as charged." Monday morning, his wife called me crying, "The bank foreclosed on our house." My name is Robert. I'm 47 years old, Senior Vice President of Acquisitions at First National Bank. For the past 25 years, I'd been building a career in finance, while my former classmates stayed in our small Ohio town, living off memories of high school glory. Standing in that gymnasium surrounded by faded championship banners and the smell of industrial floor cleaner, I watched Brad Miller work the crowd like he was still the star quarterback. At 47, he'd kept most of his hair but gained 60 pounds. The confident swagger remained, though now it carried the desperation of a man whose best days were 3 decades behind him. Lincoln High School, class of 1994. Brad Miller was everything I wasn't. 6'2", naturally athletic, effortlessly popular. I was Robert Chen, 5'6", honor roll student, and Brad's favorite target for casual humiliation. "Hey Chen, still doing my math homework?" He'd joke in the hallways, loud enough for everyone to hear. The implication was clear. I was useful for academic help, but invisible as a person. Senior year, when college acceptance letters arrived, Brad got a full football scholarship to Ohio State. I got into MIT with a partial scholarship that my parents would supplement by working double shifts at their restaurant. "Different paths for different people," Brad had said at graduation, clapping me on the shoulder with mock sympathy. "You'll probably end up doing my taxes someday." He wasn't entirely wrong. I did end up handling numbers professionally, just not the way he'd imagined. At MIT, I studied finance and discovered I had an intuitive understanding of markets, risk assessment, and the flow of money through economic systems. While Brad was playing football and majoring in communications, I was learning how modern banking actually worked. After graduation, I started at Goldman Sachs as an analyst. 80-hour weeks, brutal competition, but excellent training in how financial institutions operated. By 30, I was managing portfolios. By 35, I was identifying undervalued assets for acquisition. By 40, I was running my own division. Brad's football career ended junior year with a knee injury. He finished his communications degree, moved back to Lincoln, married his high school girlfriend Jennifer, and opened Miller's Auto Repair using money borrowed from Jennifer's father. For 25 years, our paths never crossed. I worked in Cleveland, then Chicago, then New York. Brad fixed cars and raised 2 kids in the same town where we'd graduated. I assumed he'd forgotten about me entirely. I was wrong. 18 months before our reunion, First National Bank acquired a portfolio of distressed assets from Midwest Community Bank. Small-town mortgages, business loans, credit lines, the kinds of debt that regional banks packaged and sold when they needed quick capital. As Senior VP of Acquisitions, I reviewed the portfolio personally. Most of the loans were standard residential mortgages in Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania. Working-class families, modest homes, manageable debt levels, nothing unusual. Then I saw a familiar name, Bradford Miller, 1247 Elm Street, Lincoln, Ohio. The file made for interesting reading. $340,000 mortgage on a house purchased in 2003. Business loan for $180,000 to expand Miller's Auto Repair in 2015. Credit lines totaling $85,000, mostly maxed out. Total debt, $605,000. Current payment status, 30 days past due on the mortgage, 60 days behind on the business loan. I stared at Brad's financial profile, remembering his confident prediction about doing his taxes. He'd been half right. I was handling his numbers, just not as his accountant. Professional curiosity made me dig deeper. Miller's Auto Repair had been profitable until 2018, when a new Jiffy Lube opened 2 miles away. Revenue had dropped 40% over 3 years. Brad had tried to compensate by expanding services, adding tire sales, offering towing, investing in equipment he couldn't afford. The business loan payments had become irregular in 2020. The mortgage had been refinanced twice, with Jennifer Miller signing as co-borrower. Credit card balances had steadily increased as the business struggled. Brad Miller, former star quarterback, was drowning in debt he couldn't manage. The portfolio analysis took 6 weeks. Most of the loans were viable with restructuring. A few properties needed foreclosure proceedings. I flagged Miller's accounts for special attention, not because they were unusual, but because they represented everything I understood about the gap between high school reputations and adult realities. I didn't plan revenge, I planned portfolio management. Over the following year, I monitored Brad's accounts through routine collection procedures, late notices, payment plans, extension requests. The pattern was familiar, a small business owner trying to service too much debt with declining revenue. In December 2022, Jennifer Miller called our customer service line requesting mortgage modification. The recording was part of the file I reviewed monthly. "We're good for it," she insisted to the representative. "Brad's business is just going through a rough patch. He's worked his whole life to build this." The representative explained modification requirements: current financial statements, tax returns, proof of income. Standard procedure for distressed borrowers. 2 weeks later, the documents arrived. Miller's auto repair showed $180,000 in annual revenue with expenses of $190,000. Brad's personal income for 2022, $31,000. Jennifer worked part-time at a dental office, adding another $18,000. Combined household income, $49,000. Combined debt service, $4,200 monthly. The mathematics were unforgiving. Brad needed to pay $5,400 annually in debt service while earning $49,000 in total income. Even without food, utilities, or other expenses, the numbers didn't work. I could have approved a modification, reduced payments, extended terms, partial forgiveness. Banks did it routinely to avoid foreclosure costs. Instead, I classified the Miller accounts as non-performing assets requiring resolution. Professional language for financial problems that couldn't be ignored. March 2023, the reunion invitation arrived at my Manhattan apartment. Lincoln High School class of 1994, 30-year reunion. Come see how everyone turned out. I hadn't been back to Lincoln in 15 years. My parents had sold the restaurant and moved to California in 2015. I had no connections to the town except memories and now a portfolio of distressed loans. Professional curiosity made me RSVP yes. I wanted to see how Brad Miller carried himself while facing financial collapse. Did he know how precarious his situation was? Did he understand that his hometown bank had been acquired by the institution where his former victim now held senior leadership? I doubted it. Most people don't follow banking acquisitions or understand how debt gets traded between institutions. The reunion committee sent updates throughout the spring. Brad Miller was listed as successful local business owner in the attendee profiles. Jennifer Miller was helping with decorations. They were both eager to catch up with old friends. 2 weeks before the reunion, I made a decision that surprised even me. I approved foreclosure proceedings on the Miller properties, both the house and the business. Standard collection action for accounts with no reasonable prospect of recovery. The timing wasn't coincidental. Legal notices would be served the week after our reunion. Brad would have one last weekend of playing successful local businessman before reality arrived. October 14th, 2023. Lincoln High School Gymnasium, decorated with blue and gold streamers and poster boards showing then and now photos of classmates. 230 graduates from a class of 310. I arrived quietly wearing a simple gray suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent but looked unremarkable. The strategy of successful finance professionals: never look like the richest person in the room. Brad spotted me within 10 minutes. He'd positioned himself near the entrance, greeting classmates like he was hosting the event. When he saw me, his face lit up with the predatory smile I remembered from high school. Well, Robert Chen, I was wondering if you'd show up." "Hello, Brad, good to see you." He looked me up and down, probably expecting expensive clothes or obvious success markers. My understated appearance seemed to confirm his assumptions about my life trajectory. "Still in accounting?" he asked, loud enough for nearby classmates to hear. "Finance, actually." "Close enough. Numbers are numbers, right?" He laughed, and several people joined in. Some things never change. For the next hour, I watched Brad work the room. He talked about his business, his success, his plans for expansion. He mentioned challenges. The economy's tough for everyone, but framed them as temporary setbacks for a thriving enterprise. Jennifer looked tired. She smiled when people approached, but I noticed her checking her phone frequently, probably monitoring their business account, wondering if payroll checks would clear. At 9 p.m., the reunion committee called for attention. Time for the traditional class updates, where volunteers shared career highlights. Brad volunteered immediately, he always had. "I'm Brad Miller, and I've been blessed to build a successful auto repair business right here in Lincoln. Miller's Auto Repair serves this community with honest work and fair prices. We're expanding services and looking forward to many more years of growth." Applause filled the gymnasium. Brad Miller, still the golden boy, still winning approval from the crowd. Then came the moment I'd been anticipating. Some of us stayed local and built something real, Brad continued, his voice carrying across the room. Others went chasing big city dreams. His eyes found mine. But some people never change. Still a loser. Laughter erupted. Not malicious exactly, but the comfortable laughter of people enjoying familiar social dynamics. Robert Chen, still the butt of Brad Miller's jokes. I smiled and said, guilty as charged. More laughter. Everyone assumed I was acknowledging my failure to achieve Brad's level of success. The quiet kid from high school, still accepting his place in the social hierarchy. What they didn't know was that I was guilty of something else entirely. Monday morning, October 16th, 2023. I was reviewing acquisition reports in my Manhattan office when my assistant transferred an urgent call. Mr. Chen? This is Jennifer Miller. I think there's been a mistake. Her voice was shaking. In the background, I could hear Brad shouting at someone. What kind of mistake, Mrs. Miller? The foreclosure notice. It says First National Bank is foreclosing on our house and business. But we've been working with Midwest Community Bank for 20 years. Midwest Community was acquired by First National 18 months ago. We sent notification letters to all affected customers. But we've been making payments. We have a payment plan. I pulled up her account on my computer. Mrs. Miller, your last mortgage payment was received 67 days ago. Your business loan is 94 days past due. We're trying. Brad's working 18-hour days. The business is just going through a rough patch. In the background, Brad's voice. Tell them we'll pay. We're good for it. Mrs. Miller, foreclosure proceedings begin when accounts reach 90 days past due. This is standard banking procedure. Please, she whispered, we'll lose everything. Brad doesn't know how to do anything else. This business is his whole life. I understand this is difficult. Is there someone else I can talk to? Someone with authority to help us? I paused, enjoying the moment. Actually, Mrs. Miller, you're speaking with the Senior Vice President of Acquisitions. I have full authority over distressed asset resolution. Then you can help us? I can explain your options. You have 30 days to bring all accounts current. That would require a payment of $3,700. Silence. Then Jennifer's voice, barely audible. We don't have that. The alternative is to proceed with foreclosure. Both properties will be sold at auction to recover outstanding debt. There has to be something else. You could attempt a short sale. List the properties for quick sale and use proceeds to partially satisfy the debt. What about loan modification? Other banks do that. First National evaluates modification requests based on borrowers' ability to service restructured debt. Your current income doesn't support modification. More silence. Then who makes these decisions? I do. What's your name? Robert Chen. The silence stretched for 30 seconds. Then Jennifer's voice, confused. Robert Chen from Lincoln? You went to high school with Brad? Yes. Oh my God. She hung up. Wednesday afternoon, my doorman called. Mr. Chen, there's a gentleman here to see you. Says his name is Brad Miller and it's urgent. I'd been expecting this visit. Send him up. My apartment occupied half the 42nd floor of a building overlooking Central Park. Floor-to-ceiling windows, contemporary art, furniture that cost more than most people's cars. The kind of space that announced its owner's success without vulgarity. When the elevator doors opened, Brad Miller looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. Unshaven, wearing a wrinkled shirt and jeans, carrying himself like a man who'd lost everything he'd thought was permanent. He stepped into my foyer and stopped, staring at the view of Manhattan skyline. Jesus Christ, Robert. Hello, Brad, come in. He followed me to the living room, his head turning to take in artwork, furnishings, the casual wealth that surrounded him. This is your place? Yes. How much does something like this cost? Does it matter? He sat heavily in a chair that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage payment. Jennifer told me you're the one foreclosing on us. I am the senior vice president who manages distressed assets, yes. Distressed assets? He laughed bitterly. That's what you call my life? I call it what it is. Non-performing debt that needs resolution. We're talking about my house, Robert, my business, my family's future. I understand the personal impact, but business decisions can't be based on sentiment. Brad leaned forward, his voice desperate. What do you want? You want me to apologize for high school? Fine. I was an asshole kid. I'm sorry. Apology accepted. Then help us. Work with us. We'll figure out the payments. I opened a folder I'd prepared for this conversation. Brad, your business lost money for 3 consecutive years. Your debt-to-income ratio is 238%. You owe more than you can pay even if you worked for free. Things will turn around. Based on what evidence? He had no answer. We both knew Miller's auto repair was dying slowly, killed by competition and Brad's poor business decisions. There has to be something, he said. Actually, there is. His face brightened with hope. What? I need a driver, someone reliable, professional, willing to work flexible hours. A driver? I have business throughout the tri-state area. My current arrangement is ending. The position pays $15 per hour, requires a clean driving record, and involves wearing a proper uniform. Brad stared at me, understanding slowly dawning. You want me to be your chauffeur? I want to offer you employment, steady income, health benefits, opportunity to demonstrate reliability. In exchange for what? I'll halt foreclosure proceedings, restructure your debt to manageable payments, give you a chance to rebuild. As your driver, as my employee, the silence stretched between us. Outside the windows, Manhattan hummed with the energy of 8 million people pursuing their ambitions. Inside my apartment, a former high school star quarterback contemplated driving his former victim around the city. I'd have to move here, Brad said finally. There's a studio apartment above my garage in the Hamptons. Modest but clean. You could bring Jennifer if she wants to relocate. And my business? Would be sold to satisfy existing debt. You'd start over. Brad's face cycled through emotions. Humiliation, anger, resignation. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Offering me a job after destroying everything I built. I'm not destroying anything, Brad. I'm managing a portfolio of distressed assets according to standard banking procedures. The job offer is separate. A chance for you to demonstrate professional growth. He knew it was bullshit. We both knew this was about 30 years of accumulated resentment, about the quiet kid who'd grown up to control the finances of his former tormentor. But we also both knew he had no choice. 15 an hour, he asked? Plus benefits. Health insurance, retirement contribution, 2 weeks paid vacation after a year of employment. When would I start? Next Monday. There's a uniform shop in the garment district. I'll arrange fitting and purchase. Brad looked around my apartment one more time, taking in the casual luxury that surrounded his former victim. You really made it, didn't you? I worked hard, made good decisions, built something substantial. While I was fixing cars in Ohio, while you were building what you thought would last. He stood up, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I'll need to talk to Jennifer. Of course, let me know by Friday. He walked to the elevator, then turned back. Robert? Yes? At the reunion, when you said guilty as charged, what were you guilty of? I smiled. Exactly what you accused me of, never changing. Still the same person who remembers everything and forgives nothing. The elevator doors closed on Brad Miller's face as he finally understood who'd been managing his financial fate. Friday afternoon, Brad called to accept the position. Jennifer would stay in Ohio with friends while he worked to rebuild their finances. They'd sold what they could and moved into a rental apartment. The business was gone, but they'd avoided personal bankruptcy. Monday morning, I watched from my office window as a black town car pulled up to my building. Brad Miller emerged from the driver's seat wearing a crisp navy uniform, white shirt, and black tie. At 47, he looked like what he was, a man who'd lost everything and accepted whatever opportunity remained. When I came downstairs, he opened the rear door with practiced professionalism. Good morning, sir. Good morning, Brad. How was the drive from Long Island? Smooth traffic, sir. We should arrive at your appointment with 15 minutes to spare. During the 40-minute ride to my meeting, we didn't discuss high school, the reunion, or foreclosure proceedings. Brad drove competently, navigated efficiently, and addressed me with the deference of an employee speaking to his employer, which was exactly what we were now. At my destination, he opened my door and said, I'll be waiting when you're ready, sir. Thank you. 6 months later, Brad had settled into his role. He was punctual, professional, and appropriately invisible. Jennifer visited twice, staying in the garage apartment and marveling at the lifestyle her husband now served. He seems different, she told me during her second visit. Quieter, more careful about what he says. Employment tends to modify behavior, I replied. Brad had learned the rhythms of professional service. Opening doors, managing schedules, maintaining vehicles, speaking only when spoken to. The swagger that had defined him for 47 years had been replaced by the careful deference of someone who understood his position. During our rides, I sometimes caught him watching me in the rearview mirror. Not with anger that had faded months ago, but with something like wonder. How had the quiet kid become the man who controlled his former bully's financial future? The answer was simple. Competence compounded over time. While Brad had coasted on high school glory, I'd been building expertise that translated into real power. While he'd made emotional decisions about business expansion, I'd been learning how financial systems actually worked. The reunion had been theater. Brad playing the successful local businessman, me playing the humble accountant. But the real performance had been going on for 18 months, as I systematically dismantled his financial foundation while he focused on maintaining appearances. Guilty as charged, I'd said when he called me a loser. Guilty of remembering every slight, every casual humiliation, every assumption that Robert Chen would never amount to anything significant. Guilty of building something so substantial that I could, with a few keystrokes, reshape the life of the man who'd once owned my social world. Guilty of enjoying it. A year after the reunion, I received an invitation to Lincoln High's homecoming game. Brad Miller was being inducted into the Athletic Hall of Fame for his 1993 championship season. I declined to attend, but I did send a car. Brad drove himself back to his old high school wearing his uniform to watch his former teammates celebrate achievements from 30 years ago. He stood in the parking lot of his former kingdom, holding car keys instead of a championship trophy, serving the man he'd once dismissed as irrelevant. The mathematics of revenge, it turned out, were surprisingly straightforward. Identify vulnerabilities, apply pressure systematically, wait for compound effects to reveal themselves. Brad Miller had peaked at 17. Everything since then had been decline disguised as maintenance. I'd started at the bottom and built upward methodically for 30 years. The reunion had simply been the moment when everyone else finally understood what the numbers had been saying all along. Competence beats charisma, preparation beats popularity, and the quiet kid with good grades sometimes grows up to own the game entirely. Still a loser, Brad had announced to the gymnasium full of our former classmates. He was right. I'd lost the high school game completely. Never popular, never powerful, never respected. But I'd won everything that came after. And now Brad Miller, former star quarterback, opened my car door every morning and called me sir. Some people never change. Others just wait 30 years to reveal who they really were.